orchestrated fresh revenge memoir with new characters, financial fraud plot, and airtight moral justification. Orchestrated fresh revenge memoir with new characters, financial fraud plot, and airtight moral justification. People think the one who screams the loudest in the room is the one you have to watch. They're wrong. The dangerous one is the woman in the corner who's gone quiet, the one who stopped asking for anything a long time ago. She isn't sulking. She's doing the math. I figured that out about myself on a gray Thursday morning in a downtown office that smelled like burnt coffee and lemon furniture polish. The estate attorney, Mr. Brandt, had a corner office with a view of the river and a handshake that was a little too soft. He kept straightening the same stack of papers over and over, like if he lined the edges up perfectly enough, the words on them would change. My mother sat across from me with her purse in her lap and her chin up. My brother sat next to her in a blazer I'd never seen, the kind with the tags maybe still on. He had his ankle crossed over his knee, bouncing his foot, and he was already smiling. Not at me. At the window. As you can see, Mr. Brandt said, your mother has chosen to consolidate her assets into the Holloway Family Trust. The home, the savings, the investment accounts. For her lifetime, she remains the primary beneficiary. After that, or at her discretion before that, the sole remaining beneficiary and trustee is your brother. I didn't say anything. I didn't reach for a tissue. I just sat there, very still, and watched my own reflection in the glossy black of his desk phone. The woman looking back at me was calm in a way that didn't match the room. That was the part that scared him, I think. He wanted tears. Tears he knew what to do with. The quiet he didn't. Your mother feels this arrangement reflects the family's needs, he added, and his voice cracked a little on the word needs. The family's needs. I almost laughed. I'd been the family's needs for 15 years. I was the autopay. I was the co-signature. I was the one who drove 90 minutes on a work night because the furnace went out and Mom didn't want to bother my brother. I looked at her. Did you sign already? This morning, she said. She wouldn't look at me either. She looked at her purse. It's done, honey. There's no point making a scene. I'm not making a scene. I stood up. My chair didn't even squeak. Thank you for letting me know. That threw her. She'd braced for a fight, I could tell. She had her face ready, the wounded one, the one that turns me into the villain the second I raise my voice. I gave her nothing to work with. I picked up my coat. My brother finally looked at me then, and the smile dropped a notch, because the script wasn't going the way it was supposed to. He caught me by the elevators, leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets, all casual. No hard feelings, sis, he said. I pressed the button. Of course not. Before I tell you how all of that came back around, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where in the country you're watching from. I read everyone. Now let me take you back, because to understand how a quiet woman in a freezing law office walks out without a fight, you have to understand how she got so quiet in the first place. My mother had a saying, we take care of our own. She said it at Thanksgiving. She said it from the pew at church. She said it every single time she wanted me to hand over something I'd worked for. And what it always meant, underneath, was we take care of your brother. He was the bright one. I was the reliable one, which in our house was a polite word for invisible. When he did something wrong, and he did a lot of things wrong, it dissolved before the apology even landed. He's just got a big heart. He's still finding his footing. Me, I was the one who was simply there, like the dishwasher. You only notice it when it stops running. I was 8 the first time I understood the rules. He was 10. He'd been throwing a baseball against the living room wall, even after I told him Mom would lose it. He threw it one more time, and it caught the corner of her good ceramic lamp, the one her own mother had given her, and it went off the table and shattered into 100 pieces across the carpet. He bolted out the back door so fast he left the screen swinging. Mom came in 2 minutes later. She saw the pieces. She saw me standing there. I was the only one in the room. And somehow I was also the only suspect. What did you do? It wasn't me. It was. Don't you lie to me. She didn't even pause. Go get the dustpan. I got the dustpan. My hands shook the whole time. Not because I was scared of being in trouble, but because she hadn't asked. She never asked. While I was kicking glass out of the rug, I looked through the back window and there he was in the yard, tossing the ball up to himself, and when he saw me watching, he gave me this little grin. The one that said, again. I got away with it again. My dad came home that night, saw the empty table, asked where the lamp went. Mom said I'd broken it. He just sort of grunted and picked up the paper. He didn't look at me. He almost never looked at me. That was the whole machine right there, running smooth. My brother broke it. I cleaned it up. Mom blamed me. Dad said nothing. When my brother turned 17, he took Dad's truck without asking and put it through the front of the neighbor's split-rail fence. He was fine. The truck wasn't. My dad got it fixed and, 2 weeks later, helped him buy a used Mustang because the kid had been through a lot. That same month, I asked if I could borrow somebody's car to get to my shift at the grocery store, 4 miles away, because the bus only came every 40 minutes. Mom said she had bunco. Dad was at a job site. My brother was asleep on the couch at 2 in the afternoon. Take the bus, Mom said, not looking up from her magazine. A little hardship builds character. So I built a lot of character. I worked that grocery job 40 hours a week the entire summer I was 17, and I saved every dime in a coffee can taped shut so nobody could borrow from it. I put myself through Ohio State on scholarships and 2 part-time jobs and a roommate situation I won't even get into. I lived on ramen and gas station coffee. I graduated with honors, and when I told them, my mother said, "That's nice, sweetheart. Can you help me get the folding chairs out? Your brother's bringing a girl to dinner." My brother, meanwhile, was busy being an entrepreneur. His first big idea was a sports bar with a buddy. It folded in 8 months and left my parents 14 grand in the hole because they'd invested. Then it was a vending machine route he bought off a guy he met online. The machine sat rusting in the garage. Then it was crypto. Then it was flipping houses, except he never finished a single one. Each disaster my parents covered. By the time my dad died of a heart attack at 61, mowing the lawn on a Saturday, they'd already refinanced the house once to keep my brother out of small claims court. And that's where I made the mistake that, years later, turned out to be the only thing that saved me. After the funeral, the bank started circling. The mortgage payment had ballooned after the refi. My mother had no idea how any of it worked, and the house I grew up in, the one with my height marked in pencil on the pantry doorframe, was sliding toward foreclosure. My mother sat at the kitchen table and cried and said she was going to lose everything and what would the neighbors think. So I co-signed the new loan. I put my name on the deed so the bank would approve it, and because she doesn't do computers, I set up her online banking, linked her checking and savings, built the auto pay for the mortgage, and saved the login in my own files because she'd lose it otherwise. I even quietly started covering half the mortgage myself every month out of my own account so she could keep her home. I never told the neighbors. I never told my brother. I just did it the way I'd swept up the glass because somebody had to, and it was always me. For 4 years, I paid my half. For 4 years, she let my brother live in the finished basement rent-free, while she told her church friends I'd moved away and gotten distant. The last Thanksgiving before all this, she said it to my face. "You're so cold, you know, so focused on yourself. Everything's always come easy for you." And I thought about the coffee can and the bus and the 80-hour weeks and the 4 years of mortgage payments she didn't even know I was making. And I just said, "You're right, Mom. Pass the gravy." So when I walked out of that elevator and my brother thought he'd won, here's what he didn't know. My name was still on that deed. I was still an authorized owner on accounts that were quietly bleeding her dry. And I am very, very good with money. It's literally my job. I'm a forensic accountant. I find the things people bury in spreadsheets for a living. I went home to my condo. I sat on the couch with my coat still on and the lights off, and I didn't cry. I thought about my brother's brand new blazer. I thought about my mother signing papers she didn't read because the bright one told her to. I thought about the word trustee, and then I opened my laptop. The bank's login still worked. Of course it did. Why would they ever change it? My dad picked the password, which means I picked the password, and nobody in that house could have reset it if their lives depended on it. I went into the accounts, and what I found there made the law office feel like a paper cut. The trust was real, but it was a shell. The assets were titled to it, sure, but the actual cash was still flowing out of my mother's old checking account on the same auto pays, like nothing had changed. I pulled up the scheduled transfers, and there it was, line after line, the whole machine laid bare. Auto transfer $1,200 to a leasing company. That was the truck he'd just bought. Auto transfer 2,000 memo G monthly and allowance for a 34-year-old man. Auto transfer $800 for a credit card in his name. Auto transfer $600 to a storage unit full of vending machines that never made a dime. And underneath all of it, the mortgage auto pay, the one I'd been quietly matching for 4 years, set to pull from her dwindling account on the 1st. She wasn't securing his future. She was financing his failure on a recurring billing cycle. My father's heart gave out under that lawn, and the money he left behind was being shoveled automatically into a hole that would never, ever fill. I'm going to be very clear about something because it matters. I didn't move a single dollar to myself, not one. I was a legal authorized party on those accounts, and I did exactly what any authorized party is allowed to do. I clicked into that first auto pay. The screen asked if I wanted to edit or cancel. I thought about my mother's voice. We take care of our own. I clicked cancel. The truck lease, cancel. The allowance, cancel. The credit card, cancel. The storage unit, cancel. One by one, every pipe that fed the basement prints, I shut the valve. I didn't rush. I read each confirmation box and I clicked yes, and there was a rhythm to it, almost peaceful. The mortgage auto pay I left exactly where it was, untouched, because I wanted to see what would happen when the river ran dry and the only thing left flowing was the bill nobody but me had ever truly paid. Then I went into the settings and flagged the account for an administrative review, which an authorized owner is entitled to request, and I turned off the email and text alerts so the notifications wouldn't trip the wire. In the note field, the bank keeps for the account holder's own reference, the little box where my dad used to make me type taxes or vacation, I typed 3 words. Taking care of my own. I mogged out. I closed the laptop. The room was dark and quiet, and my heartbeat was the steadiest it had been in months. I made myself a real dinner for once, eggs and toast at 9 at night, and I slept like a stone. Then I waited. A month went by, a whole month of nothing. I went to work. I caught fraud for other people's families and balanced other people's books and went to spin class on Tuesdays. The silence from them was so total it told me everything they hadn't noticed. They were so comfortable, so sure the machine was humming along that nobody bothered to look. They assumed I was beaten. They assumed the dishwasher was running like it always did. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, in the middle of a client meeting, my phone lit up on the table. A text from my mother. The mortgage payment didn't go through. The bank called the house. Did you forget to send your half this month? I read it twice. They had erased my name from the deed. They had handed everything to my brother. And here she was, on the same gray screen, asking me for my half of the house I no longer owned. The mortgage was the one auto pay I'd left running, the one I'd been carrying for 4 years, and now that her account had quietly emptied into a wall of canceled transfers, even that had bounced. She didn't connect any of it. She just knew the responsible one had finally, inexplicably, stopped fixing things. I waited until the meeting was over. I got a coffee from the break room. I typed back 4 words. There is no half. The little bubble popped up. She was typing. Then it stopped. Then it started again. Then nothing. An hour later, my brother called. I let it ring. He called again. On the fourth try, I picked up and put it on speaker so I could keep filing. "What did you do?" He was already yelling. "My truck payment bounced. My card got declined at the gas station. The bank says the account's frozen, under review. That was you. You did this." "I don't manage your money," I said. "You're a grown man with a trustee. Maybe call your trustee." "You think you're so smart." "I think you should call the bank," I said, and I hung up. The phone buzzed and buzzed in my desk drawer for the rest of the afternoon. My mother left a voicemail I deleted without finishing. My brother left 6. I let it all happen at a distance, like weather on a screen, and I went home and made eggs again. The thing is, I hadn't done anything dramatic. I want that understood. I hadn't burned the house down. I hadn't even pushed it over. They'd built a tower of cards on top of one woman's pension and one dead man's savings, and I'd simply stopped being the hand underneath it, holding it level. That's all. I let gravity get back to its job. 2 days later, a letter came that I wasn't ready for. It was from Mr. Brandt, the estate attorney. Heavy cream envelope, my name embossed and everything. My stomach dropped. I figured it was a lawsuit, that they'd found some lawyer to tell them I'd interfered, and I sat at my kitchen counter and slit it open with a butter knife, bracing for it. It wasn't a lawsuit. In the course of cooperating with the bank's review, Mr. Brandt wrote, his office had been required to pull my father's old files, the ones from before he passed. The originals he'd kept in their archive. And in those files, he'd found something he was, in his words, legally obligated to disclose. A draft will, dated about 10 months before my father died. Unsigned, he was careful to note. No legal standing, merely a document. He'd enclosed a copy for my records. I unfolded it. It was simple. One real clause that mattered. All assets, real and personal, to be divided equally, 50-50 to Bates, between my son and my daughter. 50-50. 10 months before the heart attack, my father had sat in that lawyer's office and asked for the two of us to be equal. So what changed in those 10 months? I knew exactly what changed. My mother. My brother. The pressure, the crying, that he needs it more. She's fine. She's always fine. There was a second page, a photocopy of a yellow legal pad, my father's handwriting, big and blocky and all caps, the same handwriting that used to leave me notes on the counter. Gone to a job. Feed the dog. Feed the dog. Love, Dad. This note was longer. It was addressed to the attorney. The kind of thing a man writes when he's working up the nerve to do something and hasn't lost it yet. I want it even, it said. This is the fair way. The boy is a mess. I know it. I'm not blind. Her mother just wants to protect him and she's drowning him instead. My daughter is the steady one. She's the one who understands all this. If it's split even, she'll know what to do with it. She always knows what to do. I set the page down. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt something worse, something cold and heavy that started in my chest and spread out through my arms. Because the betrayal in that law office, the one with the trust and the trustee, that one was clean. That one was an attack. And my mother was the general, and my brother was the soldier, and I was the enemy, and at least that made a kind of brutal sense. This was different. This told me my father had seen all of it. He'd seen my brother clearly. He'd seen what my mother was doing. He'd seen me, really seen me, the steady one, the one who'd know what to do. He'd written it down in his own hand. And then he'd done nothing. He'd been too tired to fight her, too soft. He let her run the house the way she'd always run it, and somewhere in those last 10 months, he gave up on the even split, and he died with my name still on the deed only because he never got around to taking it off himself. The man who taught me to check my own oil, who told me when I was 12, don't ever let anybody push you around, kiddo. He'd let them push him around his whole life, and at the end he let them push me right out the door. That hurt more than the trust ever could. The trust was my mother's cruelty, and cruelty I could be angry at. This was my father's weakness, and weakness you can only grieve. I sat in my dark kitchen and I grieved a man I'd already buried, all over again, because I finally understood that the version of him I'd held onto, the one who secretly had my back, had given up long before his heart did. She'll know what to do, his note said, and he was right, just not the way he meant. He thought I'd manage the money. He thought I'd be the grown-up one more time, cleaning up after my brother for the rest of my life, the fixer, the dustpan, forever. That's the most my father could imagine for me, even in his own goodbye. More responsibility. I folded the pages and I put them in a drawer and I made a decision that he never would have had the spine to make. I wasn't going to manage the mess. I was going to drag it into the light. Because here's what I knew that they didn't. I'm a forensic accountant. When the bank put that account under review and started actually pulling records, they were going to find things. And I knew sitting there that there was no possible way my brother had run that house for 4 years without leaving fingerprints. So the next morning I called the bank's fraud line myself. Not as an angry sister. As a named party on a deed reporting what I had legitimate reason to suspect. I'm a co-owner on a property tied to the Holloway Family Trust. I told the woman, I have reason to believe documents in my name were altered without my consent, and I'd like to formally report suspected fraud. I told her my name had been on that deed for 4 years, and I'd never signed anything removing it. I told her my brother had been receiving large recurring transfers with no loan documentation. I told her where to look. I didn't accuse anybody of a specific crime. I just handed them the thread and told them to pull. Thank you, she said, and her voice had gone very flat and very serious. There's already an active review on this account. What you're describing escalates it to a forensic investigation. This may involve law enforcement. I understand, I said. A week later, a vice president called me from a number with no caller ID. He didn't waste words. Ma'am, our investigation is complete. I want to walk you through what we found. I sat down at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd read my father's note. First, he said, they confirmed years of undocumented transfers to my brother. 6 figures. No loan agreements, no repayment terms, nothing. Money treated as a faucet. Second, those funds had gone to leased vehicles, failed business ventures, and personal credit card debt, none of it estate-related. And third, he said, and his voice slowed down here, the most serious finding. The quitclaim deed that removed your name from the property, he said. Your signature on that document does not match any signature on file for you. We believe it was forged, and the notary who stamped it appears to be a personal acquaintance of the trustee. I had to put my hand flat on the table. I hadn't backed into anything. I hadn't lied to anybody. I hadn't stolen a dime. I was a legal owner of that house, and I knew exactly which somebody, the one in the new blazer, had forged my name on a county document to erase me and gotten his buddy to notarize it. My mother had handed him the keys to the whole estate, and he'd used them to commit an actual felony to cut me out of the one thing my father never managed to take. As of this morning, the VP said, all accounts are frozen. The trust is being challenged as invalid, and given the defaulted loans, the lender intends to begin foreclosure. This is a criminal matter now. You'll likely be contacted by investigators as a witness. I thanked him. I hung up. And I sat in the quiet for a long time, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt my whole body unclench. That night, I slept 10 hours. I never slept 10 hours. I woke up and the war was over, and it wasn't even in my house. It was raging somewhere off in the suburbs, in the basement, in a frozen account and a foreclosure file, and I was sitting in my condo drinking coffee, a witness and nothing more. I had told the truth. I had handed over the documents. I was not a participant. I was just the woman who finally stopped sweeping up the glass. The collapse, when it came, was quiet. That's the part nobody warns you about. You picture a building coming down, all noise and dust. It's not like that. It's a slow leak. It just finds you. A Sunday, my brother called from a number I didn't recognize because I'd blocked all the others. I almost let it ring. but I knew this was the last piece, so I picked up and said nothing. "I know you're there," he said. His voice was small. Not the screaming anymore. "Sis, please." I waited. "They took the house," he said, and then it turned, the way it always turned. "You took the house. The police came to Mom's. They asked her questions. She's a wreck. They're saying somebody forged your name and they're looking at me. Why would you do this to us? We're your family." I let the silence sit. He was throwing himself against it and it wasn't moving. "Say something," he yelled, and there it was, the same cracked sob he'd cried at 10 when the lamp shattered, the angry kind, the "it's not fair" kind. "You think you're better than us, sitting up there in your fancy condo with your fancy job. Say something." I thought about it. Better. That was always their word, not mine. Golden child and ghost daughter. The bright one and the dishwasher. That was Mom's game. The one where he won and I lost before either of us even sat down. I wasn't playing it anymore. "No," I said finally, and my voice was even and almost gentle. "I don't think I'm better than you." He went quiet, confused, waiting for the catch. "I'm just done," I said, and I hung up, and I blocked that number too. I watched the rest of it from a distance because the information just drifted to me whether I went looking or not. I checked Zillow one night out of an old habit and typed in the address I grew up in, and there it was, bank owned. Priest to move. The listing photos were a gut punch, the dead lawn a foot high, the porch light gone dark, the inside stripped bare. You could still see the pale rectangles on the walls where the family photos used to hang, the dents in the carpet where the dining table sat. A ghost house. The shell of a family that ate itself from the inside. A girl I barely knew from high school emailed me a couple weeks later. "Hey, weird question. Is your brother okay? Saw his truck up on Marketplace, selling for parts. Looked kind of desperate." I didn't write back. The truck Mom had been auto-paying $1,200 a month to lease. Sold for parts. Gravity. And then, just before the holidays, an email went around from a great aunt, one of those photo-stuffed family newsletters. I scrolled past the grandkids and the dog in a Santa hat, and at the bottom there was a note. "Please keep my sister in your prayers. It's been a very hard year, as I'm sure you all know. She's in a little apartment over off the highway now, and the transition has been difficult." A little apartment off the highway. I pictured it. The trucks going by all night. The beige carpet, the popcorn ceiling. My mother, who once had prize-winning roses and a dining set she wouldn't let anyone eat at, listening to semis downshift at 3 in the morning. That one was the hardest. I will pretend it wasn't. I sat there with my tea going cold and I asked myself, straight, "Do you feel guilty?" And the answer came back, no. I hadn't forged anybody's name. I hadn't built a life out of lies. I hadn't drained a dead man's savings into a leased truck. I felt something, but it wasn't guilt. It was sadness, the distant kind, the kind you feel for a stranger on the news. Sadness for a woman who'd had one clear choice. Between the daughter who carried her and the son who bled her, and chose the son so hard, so completely, that she took all three of them down with her. The friends evaporated by the way, the church crowd, the bunco ladies, the whole audience she performed Family First for. Not one of them ever called to yell at me. They just disappeared the second the money and the perfect house facade cracked, because that's all they were ever friends with. There was no big confrontation, no final scene. Just quiet ruin, going about its business. I spent the holidays in my condo. I ordered Chinese on Christmas Day and watched a dumb movie with my feet up, and my phone sat face down on the cushion and never once lit up. And somewhere around the second movie, I noticed something I almost didn't have a word for. I was happy. Actually, plainly happy. People love to tell you that you have to forgive to find peace. I don't believe that anymore. I haven't forgiven my mother for a single thing, and I sleep fine. Forgiveness was never mine to hand out anyway. It's a gift, and a gift says what you did was all right, and what they did was not all right. Peace didn't come from forgiveness. peace came from a locked door and a block number and 400 miles of quiet between me and the people who only ever called when something broke. I never got a dime, in case you're wondering. When the dust settled and the bank seized the house and unwound the accounts, it all went to cover the debts, the forged paper, the undocumented loans, the years of my brother's failures. There was nothing left at the bottom of it but zero. And here's the thing they never understood. The thing that was, in my mother's eyes, my real crime all along. I didn't need it. I had my job. I had my savings. I had my small, clean, quiet life that I'd built with my own two hands while they called me cold for building it. That life was the one thing they couldn't sign over, couldn't forge me out of, couldn't auto-pay into the ground. I didn't inherit the house. I didn't inherit the money. I inherited the freedom to live without them, and I'll take that trade every single time. I still think about that text, the one that started the avalanche. Did you forget to send your half? And my answer, there is no half. I meant it about the mortgage, sure. But sitting here now, coffee in hand, a book open, the morning quiet and entirely my own, I understand I meant a lot more than that. There was never any half of him I owed them. There was no half of my time, my money, my guilt, my peace that belonged to people who only saw me when something needed fixing. For 31 years, they handed me the dustpan and called it love. I finally set it down. There is no half. There's just my whole life, and it's mine, and I'm keeping it. For most of my life, I thought being the responsible one was a sentence I'd been handed at birth. I swept up the glass I didn't break. I took the bus while the Mustang sat in the driveway. I paid half the mortgage on a house my own mother let my brother forge my name off of. I used to lie awake asking what was wrong with me, that love in our family always arrived with an invoice stapled to it. I see it differently now. None of those hard years were wasted. They built the exact woman who could walk out of that freezing law office without breaking, who could open a laptop in the dark and know precisely what she was looking at. Here's the part people miss when they hear a story like mine. I didn't win because I was angrier than my mother. I won because I never let myself become her. I didn't move a single dollar that wasn't mine. Not one. And when the investigators finally came, that clean conscience wasn't just a feeling. It was a wall I could stand behind while the whole thing came down around the people who built it on lies. Garrett forged a signature. I reported one. That difference was everything, and it cost me nothing to keep because I'd been guarding it my whole life. I also won because I paid attention. Being the steady one had quietly turned me into someone who reads the fine print nobody else bothers with, who knows what an undocumented transfer really is, who can look at a row of auto pays and see a man being kept a child on a billing cycle. My mother had crying on her side. I had the numbers. The numbers don't blink. And I survived the fallout because long before any of it, I'd built a life of my own. One careful brick at a time while they called me cold for laying it. That's the thing about the strength to walk away. It only exists if you've spent years building something worth walking toward. I had a job. I had savings. I had a quiet condo and a door that walked. They couldn't auto-pay that into the ground. They didn't lose the house because of me. They lost it because of every choice they made before I ever typed in that password. The favoritism, the rescues, the forged deed. The man my brother became because no one ever let him fall. I just stopped being the hand underneath it all, holding it level. If you take one thing from me, take this. Build the kind of character no one can subpoena, sharpen the kind of judgment that sees what's really happening, and quietly make yourself a life you could survive losing everyone in. Do that, and no one can ever hand you a dustpan again and call it love.